Cool.
Maybe we should start real quick with just like, what is the map?
The map at Liminal Earth, it's a crowdsourced map of paranormal, amazing, interesting, incredible stories from all over the world. Anybody who wants to, who's had an amazing experience, it could be paranormal, it could be like, I saw a dog wearing shoes, can come to the map and submit their story, and we'll put it on the map. We potentially could eventually see patterns. It gives us the chance to potentially visit places that are near us or places we're visiting, and can help us remythologize our landscape that way, give more meaning to the places where we exist and interact with the world. So liminal.earth is where you can find the stories and where you could submit your own.
And so right now we have a bunch of stories that just came in for this week, and we're just going to go through some of the new ones.
We're going to talk about a few of the latest map dates and then just take turns reading some of the map submissions, and then maybe finish off with some light divination.
Yeah, this is from the latest entry, and this was submitted by someone named Leo. So this happened in Ohio, 1998, and it was a town called, I've never heard of this town in Ohio. It's called Tip City, Ohio. So this is really an interesting one to me because it has like a bunch of stuff going on. I love that sort of high weirdness entry where it's not just like one thing, and this definitely fits the bill. So I'll go ahead and read it. So the house I lived in from birth until about age 10 had a cemetery on its property. While there was one recent grave from the Vietnam War, almost all the rest dated back much further, from between the late 1800s to early 1900s. For as long as I can remember, I felt presences within the house and spent a good amount of time in the graveyard. While I never saw any physical apparitions there, I always knew that I was never alone, although I always felt very comfortable with whatever I sensed around me. The home also had several acres of forest, and on numerous occasions, I would see white animals watching me from just inside the tree line. Several times it was a very large, long-haired dog, and another time it was a deer. But the animals would always be pure white and simply standing there motionless, looking towards me and the house for a few moments before they would suddenly be gone. While living here, I also had several dreams where I was visited by a being that appeared like a young boy around my age. We never spoke that I can remember, but twice when I saw him, he gave me an item that I then went on to actually receive in the physical world. Both times through my grandmother. The first was an antique Polaroid camera, and the second was a necklace. After my family moved, I never dreamt of this being again. And that's the entry.
Wow.
Kind of cool. It's got like eerie cemetery haunted house vibes, but also like strange white animal staring at you from the woods, and like a dream visitation that ended up like manifesting in the waking world too somehow. That's a primo entry right there in my take.
Yeah, I got multiple waves of chills as you continue to tell that story.
I did too, because it's not necessarily that the elements are like increasingly spooky. It's almost like that synchronous personal depth that gives them their chill power.
Yeah,
like the whole thing is dreamlike, not just the dreams.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, animal phenomenon is out there, but then you take it a step further and it's all albino animals. Like something's off here.
And they're kind of watching from the forest. I don't know, something about that. So, I don't know.
Yeah,
it reminds me of this story. I have it on video somewhere. When I went back to Amber's land that she grew up on in Georgia, in the middle of nowhere. There was almost like a commune of adult families that live there. And I was talking to one of them, this older man, Joe, and he had big like sunglasses, wraparound sunglasses. And I filmed him, and he was talking about back on the land when Amber, my wife, was young. He remembers seeing this UFO fly over. And I was like, okay, I'm definitely filming this. And then a white dog came out of the forest. And they're like, what is this stray dog? And they kept it for a while. And they're like, okay, I guess we have a new dog. And then he said that a couple years later, they saw a UFO again, and the dog ran out into the forest and never came back. So it was like ET or something. Like it like got left behind and then like returned home or something.
I love that story of yours. I've heard it before. It makes me think. Like, so there's this planet of dogs somewhere, and like the dog that was there repeated it, like, and now all that the dogs on that planet know about humans is that like they live on these communes.
Totally.
Their leader is like a guy with like wraparound sunglasses.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And they lived in a town called Cairo, Georgia, and they had built like a pyramid to grow sprouts, magic healing sprouts. That's where my wife's grew up. So like there's this pyramid there, and it's like a really interesting place. Yeah, I like that. That's what the dog took back, that lore and mythology back to the home planet. Great. I need to find that footage because it's so cool. It's such a. You mean he's just older man telling the story very nonchalantly.
Perfect for the Liminal Earth archive.
I know. You saw a white Bigfoot.
I did, yeah. So in my like adolescence, I think I was 15 or 16, and we were just cruising down one of the backcountry roads along the Ohio River Valley, and had like no alcohol in my system. I didn't do any drugs or anything. We would just like ride around and listen to metal music, and along this one road we saw a massive white version of this Bigfoot like creature cross the road. It was one of those like crosses the road in just a few steps and is pretty nonchalant but looks back at you. So there's this exchange that goes from did it see us to oh yeah, we're acknowledged to I don't think they really care that we're driving right by. But you have that acknowledgement of, okay, they turned back and looked, and I looked into their eyes and vice versa. And then also along that road, it wasn't the same evening, but we had like a phantom road rager. It was also late at night, and someone was coming up really close to our bumper, flickering their bright lights at us. Crazy. So eventually we pull into someone's driveway and try to let them pass. And no one passes. So we go back out and we go back down the road we were just leaving, and we don't find a single car with brake lights on in a driveway. We have a spotlight, so we're looking, and no evidence of any car had passed, and no evidence of any car being behind us. But we remember the high beams and the honking and this like weird franticness about it, to the point where we were almost going to hit a ditch. We ended up hitting a driveway, but nothing ever passed. So creepy. Someone
That's
out
really
there
creepy.
who just has eternal road rage. All right, what do you got for us, Garrett?
Oh, I don't have one. I didn't come prepared to class.
Oh, Garrett, that's okay. We're the teachers.
I can pull one up.
While he's looking, the ink I made out of mushrooms, like if anybody saw it on our TikTok, it's actually starting to, like, you can see the spores, the mushroom spores on the surface of the ink.
What?
It's like,
Really?
yeah. It like, I don't know, it's hard to, because it's a liquid, I can't exactly get it on the camera. But
you got to get one of those transparent droppers and like do like a macro shot.
Yeah. You can kind of see it. It kind of looks frothy there. And, like, that's not mold or anything. That's like spores of mushrooms, because that's why they melt like that. That's how they generate their spores. And I don't know what the science behind it is, but I just thought that was kind of cool. Like, I've got ink filled with spores. I'm here in Rockaway Beach, Oregon. We got here really late. It was dark, completely dark. Pulled into this building to turn around, and I saw something out of the corner of my eye. Even though it was pitch black, I saw this from the road and was like, oh my gosh, is that what I think it is? And now I'm here to report it is what I think it is. It's these Shaggy Parasols. Look how big they are. Oh my gosh. I'm going to turn them into ink. This is really exciting. I've never found these that are this big. I mean, look at this. Huge. Giant. So this is a really big one. They melt, basically. I'm going to pick these. I'm going to put them in this little container. And they're going to turn into a blackish substance that we can use as ink for painting and spellcraft, or, you know, whatever we want to use it for. So this is very exciting. I'll make a video once they are all completely melted. Okay, cool. I'm going to put this in this container and see if we can make some ink. So it's a week later. All of my mushrooms have liquefied or deliquesced in order to help spread their spores. They don't actually rot. What they're doing is part of a natural self-digestion process. What I have ended up with is basically this. That's actually quite a lot of liquid from those mushrooms. I'm going to use this as the ink to write, to draw, to paint. Let's find out how well it worked. Of course, special ink requires special writing utensils, so I ordered this feather quill set online. It's got wax seals in it. I can seal stuff with wax. So I put a little of the mushroom ink into our inkwell here, and I've never written with a quill before, so this should be interesting. One tip, you might want to add a drop of essential oil to it, the ink, before you start using it, because it's stinky. Now, there are ways you can experiment and try and make it a little darker, a little thicker. I might add some arrowroot starch in and just kind of mix it up to make it a little thicker for writing purposes. And there you have it. We made our own ink out of mushrooms.
I love it. And I think now is a good time to talk about, like, what the purpose behind the use of that ink is magically, and how I want to take Petri dishes that have potato starch, agar, and I want to squirt a little sample of Jeremy's mushroom ink and see if any mycelium actually starts to develop. If it does develop, that means that you can write a magic word, a magic sentence on a piece of paper with this ink. You can plant it, and it has a scientific chance of your wish or your magic sentence fruiting and like becoming a part of your system. That's
yeah, cool. Okay, so I'm gonna do this one about family doppelgangers from Belton, South Carolina. This happened in 2004. It's admitted by Nothing. When I was around 8, I lived at home with my mom and dad and my 17-year-old sister. I would always see her at the house, only to find out she was never home. I used to get so mad because I would try to talk and play with her, but she always completely ignored me. But it wasn't her. As I got older, my dad would see me at home when I was at a friend's house. My mom would constantly hear me playing with my toys, only to remember I was at school. Around when I was 12, we moved to a new house, and my dad would still see me when I was away. Ugh, I don't like that at all. Like some residual family, or just like that kind of like changeling thing, like you but not you. I don't like that at all. Yeah. What could this be? Like a phantom version of yourself. It's weird that all the members of the family were having this experience. So like she was seeing her sister, her dad was seeing a version of her. I don't like that at all. And like I've mentioned many times, one of my only paranormal experiences I've had personally is seeing myself, like outside of myself. It was like seeing a ghost out of the corner of my eye turning, but it was me. So I don't like this, like seeing like phantoms that are of living people. I think it's creepy.
I always just wonder if there's like a time slip element.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think that John Tenney has one of the episodes of Realm of the Weird where it kind of ponders that of, instead of it being, an apparition mimicking you, what if it is you? It's just you from a different time. It's just an extension or projection of you rather than something else. But that's eerie, especially if Pop's on a business trip. He's out of state, you took him to the airport and then you see him at home, like, nope.
Do you know what is weird too? I was like, as I was reading this one, I had this memory that I have not thought about in a long time. But like when I was a kid, like, like 4, my parents said I used to talk to someone in my room, and I would talk about this older lady who lived in, who was there that I could see and they couldn't see. And that she had, and then my mom did some like research, and there was a person who died in that room. I used to talk to an older woman, apparently, a dead woman.
AP Strange and I were talking about that the other day. Early reported visitations by your parents. So it was on the topic of extraterrestrial UFO stuff. And it was the joke between Rob and AP and I were, I'm secretly an alien.
You Bex are?
Yeah. I took the picture with the sunglasses and the hat.
Right.
The poorly disguised ultra-terrestrial. And so we were having this chain of jokes. And then I said, well, I actually, like my mom used to tell me when I was a kid that she would walk into the nursery and see like what she described as angelic beings just hanging out with me and watching over me in my crib. And how I'm the only blonde in my like immediate family. I have aunts and cousins that are, but both of my parents almost have black hair. And so there was always a joke growing up that I was dropped off, in a saucer because I didn't look like anybody in the family. But then AP Strange has a similar experience. And so we're thinking with these new perspectives that we have in this field that we work in, and we're like, were those angels or were those possibly extraterrestrials? That's really interesting, and his experience was really similar. It was just balls of light, I think. So
you're kind of like that dog that ran out of the forest in Georgia.
Oh, God. I'm E.T.
Not to say you're a dog. Yeah, you're like E.T.
I was just thinking about how I have a white dog.
Yeah.
I'm E.T., he's E.T. We found each other somehow in Tennessee.
Oh, yeah, so there's this mystery grandma one. Should I just do this real quick? Let's see.
Go ahead.
Mystery grandma. I had moved back in with my father after my divorce for a short period of time into the house that my family had built and I had grown up in. My dad was a long-haul truck driver and needed someone to watch it while he was on the road. It was a country house with no close neighbors, no cell signal even. My parents divorced and my mom hadn't been at the house for a few years, and she refused to even get close to the house after the divorce. I was sitting in the living room helping my girls get ready to leave, and I heard what I thought was static on a radio, even though I had nothing on in the house and we'd shut everything off since we had to leave. And then I heard my mom call for me, and she had a specific way of calling for me. She'd always saying my name out, like, Lana. Just her way of getting my attention when I was little, and I'd not heard her sing my name since I was little. I looked up my daughter like you did, like, did you just hear that? And she went, Grandma, and got super excited to see Grandma. I looked at her and said, that's not Grandma. And I hurried her to leave. I even called my mom once I was back into cell range and asked if she had stopped by, and she's like, no, I've been at work all day. That wasn't me. To this day, I still can't find a logical reason as to what happened. I assumed it was a time distortion, but I'm not sure. Oof.
Oh, man.
And that was submitted by Lana, and this happened in Hazel Dell, Illinois.
Wow. Thank you for your submission, Lana.
Yeah, thank you.
Ooh, spooky.
Very similar to this, though. Yeah. What's that, Jeremy?
I said, that's not Grandma.
Yeah, I know. That's not Grandma.
That was the exact voice I heard it in. Oh, my God. Oh, my goodness. It seems to be like we have a pattern of doppelgangers and not quite ghosts, but not quite ourselves pattern here tonight. So following that, the map submission of the week is Strangeness on the Iron Bear Teenaway Ridge. Now it's categorized under time distortions, visions, dreams, etc. And this was from Cle Elum, Washington. Am I saying that correctly?
Clay Elum.
Clay Elum,
Clay Elum,
Washington.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where is that about?
It's just over the Cascades on like I-90.
I
Sort of
see.
near,
Okay.
near like Rosslyn and that area.
Yeah, that has the gas station with the Cinnabon. I know where that is.
There's
I know
also
exactly where that is.
There's a combination fruit stand antique mall out that way.
And there's a billboard for the Bigfoot convention out there.
Nice.
We map Bigfoot billboards and Cinnabon gas stations. Like that's our jam.
Okay, so this map submission, oh wow, it's pretty recent. So they have this dated June 16th of 2021. And this is an anonymous submission, and this is something that you're more than welcome to do, both with your location and your identity. If you want to submit to the liminal.earth map, you don't have to include your name. You can put whatever you want in there, and you don't have to include your location. You can make it as broad as you want. When in doubt, just use the town name. Let's see what Anonymous has to say here out in the Cascades. My husband and I were walking the Iron Bear Trail. A section of this trail runs along a forested ridge in the shape of a U, such that you can see part of the trail across the way from where you stand. As my husband and I were finishing off the hike, we're walking north on the trail, headed to the bend that will take us around the ridge. I tend to walk with my gaze locked on the trail near my feet to look for wildflowers, but I was struck with the urge to look across the ridge at the section of the trail we would be walking on once we crossed the bend. As I glanced at the trail in the distance, I was struck with the fancy of seeing doppelgangers of myself and my husband walking on the other trail. I thought the idea was funny and decided to share the daydream with my husband. After hearing my story, he gawked and said I was imagining the exact same thing. We both had the sense that we may have experienced a whisper in the simulation. What do y'all think about that?
That's really cool. I like that she calls it a fancy.
Mm-hmm. The whisper in the simulation. It's a fun way to interpret it.
I like it too because it's not like a concrete, like, we saw ourselves on the trail, but it was still like weird enough that, you know, they thought to submit it as an odd thing, because it is. It's like, and I'd still think of it as like almost a doppelganger or time slip kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. Like, what do you do if you're hiking, you haven't seen anybody, you're finishing up, and then you just see yourselves, the same clothes. Like, I would just wave at it, I think, and point and see what would happen, but I don't know how I would react other than that. Just
I've never been on that trail.
We should like we do with a lot of these map submissions, we should go check it out.
Yeah, right.
Get a lay of the land. That would be another great introductory case log, which just first impressions of like some satellite images, check out maybe some other stories in the area and get like a an initial kind of report together on that, because that's something I want to explore.
And if we ever go out and visit, when we're filling up our tank, we got Cinnabon.
And local produce and Bigfoot convention.
Should we do like a little quick divination? I don't know what we want to do it on.
Right. Like, I have a couple of decks here. I was just gonna pull a card for like the weekend, or trying to get some insight on the map submissions. So I don't know. What were y'all thinking?
We could ask about this doppelganger thing, like maybe some insight into, because there's a couple. It seemed like majority of the ones we just talked about had this kind of doppelganger aspect to them, or kind of. So maybe we could just see if there's any insight into like what that kind of phenomenon is, or like why it is. I don't know. Maybe
let's see what it says. Yeah.
Yeah, but I was just gonna go grab a couple of decks that I think would be perfect for this kind of insight, and they're in the living room, so I'll just be right back. But if you want to explain what you're doing, I hear dice, so I know what's going on. Yeah. Jeremy, what do you want to
do? We're going to do a cross. I'm going to roll the dice. He's going to look up the words in his books.
So I'm going to use the Memento Mori deck. I've found it to be most successful when you're divining for like paranormal situations, paranormal activity, spirit communication in general. So I think getting insight into doppelgangers, this is an excellent deck, and it was created by Claire Goodchild, blackandthemoon.com. Check it out.
Have you done much research on doppelgangers and like what do you guys, either of you have any like where that comes from, that kind of, I know it's like a thing that we kind of talk about generally in the culture, but I don't know the history of that or the folklore.
I can start. I can start. It sounds like a funny log on it. I think is the direction I'm going to go with this.
I mean, I think ever since people saw their reflections in the water, they probably had doppelganger stories, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would totally be worth looking into a little bit more. I mean, you know, there's the idea of changelings and
you
know.
What do we want our first question to be about regarding the doppelganger phenomenon?
It's like a
what are you?
Yeah.
What are you? What'd you say, Jeremy?
What's the deal with doppelgangers? Give us some insight into the doppelganger phenomena.
What's going on with that? All right. So I pulled... So the lantern jumped out while we were talking. You gotta love front-facing cameras here. I'll show you there. And then I pulled... How do you say the... Scythe?
Mm-hmm.
Scythe. Okay, so the jumper card's definition is a guide, a passage through, no longer in the dark, safety, the soul, and clarity. So this was just something that fell out when we were discussing what our first question should be. And I kind of like the overarching theme of what is a doppelganger, possibly, according to this card, a guide or the soul, in a way, is the short answer. And now I'm going to look up what the scythe represents, and that was pulled after we asked formally what's going on with doppelgangers. It represents death, sudden change, the reaper comes, termination, harvesting a crop, and precision.
That's kind of creepy.
So maybe it's just theorizing off of the two. Maybe it's a part of your soul or a part of, let me find that other, part of your soul or part of a guide that helps you through during sudden changes, death, or during times of like harvest or change.
Well, I'm actually almost done with these our sentence here.
Yes.
3211. Hang on.
Okay. Third card jumped out as a charm.
Charm?
Charm. And this is an oracle deck. This is not a tarot deck, so it doesn't have a major and minor arcana. It's just a series of images and symbols that have assigned meanings for all those out there. And it's in Roman numerals, so I'm having fun with that. So it represents a gift, whimsical, decoration, an amulet, something pretty, a trophy, and magical powers. So if I were to read the spread as it's come, the cards flowing from one to the other, I would say Lantern provided a soul or a guide, a spirit guide of some sort. The scythe represents times of change, times of harvest, and even death. So maybe the soul or the guide comes to you in these specific situations and times. And the charm represents magical powers. So maybe only people who have maybe PK type abilities or some very subtle psychic abilities that haven't been developed can develop doppelgangers. So that would line up with the soul, times of change or turbulent times, and then charm being representing magical powers or a gift. So maybe our submitter is someone who has some very subtle abilities, and maybe this doppelganger that they saw is just pieces of their soul that's come out during a very transitional time, or maybe a time of change of some sort. That's what the memento mori is looking like here.
I like it.
Interesting.
I got something. This is maybe a weird thing, but when we were talking earlier about doppelgangers, I was thinking about Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Do you guys remember this movie?
Oh,
and how they kept seeing themselves like from the future.
Yeah.
And meeting that was kind of coming up. And I remember, I haven't seen part 2 in a long time, but there is the death shows up with the scythe.
Oh, that's
right? Like that image of death and the scythe. And I'm wondering, you know, this is coming up. Like, what was his role? I need to watch that movie again. But what was his role in that? And like doppelgangers, and if they're like this fragment of your timelines or something, if there's some kind of like collective unconscious relationship between those things of the scythe, and I don't know. It's just interesting that was in that same movie. Yeah. Where that's like, to me, like when I think of that, other than Twin Peaks, that's like one of the doppelganger images I get is that movie. Yeah. Anyways, just curious about that.
Twin Peaks are terrifying.
Yeah, that's like totally. So it makes me want to go watch the other Bill and Ted movie and see what there's some meaning there.
So I put this sentence in there. I'll show you the books that I used. I used Huckleberry Country, Wild Food in the Pacific Northwest, Ozark Ozark Magic and Folklore, The Princess Bride.
Ooh.
Also magical.
Kind of topical, but Botanical Inks.
Ooh.
Basilius Bessler's Florilegium. And
that's a mouthful.
And the book we've been talking about lately on the Discord, which is Occult Botany.
I was hoping.
Really, oh yeah, no, it's awesome. I'm really enjoying this one so far. So that's
you should mention real quick. Mention the Discord real quick. What that is.
Yeah, our Discord is so I don't know. Some people probably don't even know what Discord is to begin with, and it's basically just it's like a chat room, but it's a server so we can have different chat channels and talk about different topics and stuff like that. And it's really cool because for $1, if you join our Patreon for $1. You get access to this Discord, and there's all these super smart, interesting, fascinating people there with this wealth of knowledge and experiences. And we just have really interesting conversations about, you know, cool books or current events or how to contact UFOs or, and it's a lot of fun. I totally, we're starting a really cool little community over there. And I hope anybody who's watching or listening or comes across our Discord would consider hanging out with us, because it's fun.
Yeah,
it sure is.
So we did a sentence. I rolled all my dice here and I gave them to Jeremy, and he used them to make a little magic sentence using those books. And so you want to drum roll sentence here?
Well, so this is not necessarily the final order of the words, but these are the words I pulled. Mixed, like mixing bowl mixed. Day. Escape. Beige, like the color. Gardens. And essential. It's interesting. Beige is interesting to me because I don't know about you guys, but to me, beige is like mundane.
Mm-hmm.
Like kind of like, I mean, I wouldn't say boring necessarily, but it's like flat, like
neutral.
Like if you're having a mixed day, you need to, it's essential that you escape the beige gardens.
Oh, a beige garden would be like, yeah, just like, that would be a terrible garden visit.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be like a monoculture crop of like fava beans or something.
Right.
I think that word escape is interesting because it's like part of your soul. We talk the soul like escaping out of you. I think that is like it's like a broken off piece of you or something.
Mm-hmm. I had a thought too. Give it with the scythe energy imagery, and if I think like a beige garden, I think of like wheat.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And you cut that with the scythe. Wow. That's interesting too.
Beige gardens, essential. I don't know. It's intriguing.
Essential is like bread, like it's like your staples too, like it kind of like
essential bakery.
It's also a really mundane thing to eat. That's like your pantry food. If you don't go to the store, you're kind of left with meat products, pretty much.
Yeah.
So what I think we should do, just to get a little clarification on that, I want to whip out our oracle and just see if we can get some sort of response.
Cool.
So while I'm shuffling and things, Jeremy, do you want to talk about how this oracle developed and how this came about? I came a little late in the game, but tell me some of the thoughts behind developing this and how that all went down.
This is the Oracle of the Hypogeum, and it's an oracle deck that's available for purchase through our website. And it is one that Garrett and I and our mystery friend Tim developed based on the symbols and philosophy of the ancient Quatrian civilization. But the idea behind it is that these are all symbols that are I don't want to say broad, but they're universal. They're very universal symbols, and so it's a very intuitive deck. It's not like, and with tarot, you often have to like study and read the meanings and memorize the meanings of the cards. But this deck is designed so that even if you've, for instance, one of the cards is mountain, and okay, you look at the mountain and you're like, okay, it's a big thing. It's got, they're pointy, it's heavy. It's like you can sort of use that intuitive idea to develop a meaning or develop a reading during the divination. And they do have specific meanings as well. There are some from Quatrian mythology. There are 16 special cards called the Magicians and the Monsters, who are creatures from mythology who sort of are in this yearly annual struggle. So the cards have specific meanings too, but yeah, we developed it, we put it out, and it's been play tested again and again and again, and consistently has great results. And it looks like we might have another one. Bex, is that what you're seeing here? What'd you get?
I got the plain card.
What?
Wow.
Another card I've never pulled in this deck. Now, as you know, Jeremy, as we're going to find out, it represents
That's wild.
Exposure, and it represents monotony that one can escape by viewing the details. One more card shot. Did you see my reaction when they pulled this? I was like, oh my gosh, this deck constantly, I'm telling y'all, not just because it's our deck, but this thing constantly drops my jaws.
Yep, and there's the shape, and there's the beige of monotony, and there's basically, that's like a, I think it's supposed to be the symbols like kind of like a grass, like a tall grass, like wheat.
Mm-hmm.
That's
exactly.
That is incredible. I mean, I'm sorry. That's like, I don't want to be like hyping our own stuff or deck or whatever, but I can't believe that's the card.
Yeah. And I shuffled on camera for a reason, and it kind of jumped out. So I was shuffling all high and awkward. So that y'all saw I was just shuffling like I did not choose that card. It jumped out.
That's wild. So it has the wheat on it. It's about escape, beige. I mean,
wow. Escaping the mundane by looking at the details.
Right.
So these doppelganger experiences are almost like glimpses into this other world that requires you to really focus and pay attention in order to see it.
Yeah.
It's because like if you look at a plane, you just see like a big sheet of beige. You just see like, right? You just see like a, it would just be like the forest, but you can get down close and you can look at a single piece of grain, look at one single stalk or whatever, and kind of focus on the details of that to escape being in this big world of just like flatness.
Yeah.
Wow. Or like the creatures that live on the plains and the community that's like, if you part the wheat, right, or chop it down, then you can see all the detail that's there beyond the beige garden.
Wow.
Y'all, that was a super wild read. I cannot believe that.
Really cool.
I'm really excited that we captured
that. Let's think about it some more. If any weird synchronicities happen around that magic sentence or this poll, you let me know. I'm writing a log about it now, baby. It's coming.
Real quick is actually this morning Yuki's like, I'm a Virgo. What does Virgo mean? I'm like, and I was trying to explain like the maiden and like that, but like for an 8-year-old. Yeah. And then I looked it up and it has to do with
Demeter.
It has to do with wheat. And I was reading all about that this morning. So it's kind of like a theme today for me. So
Demeter is
definitely.
Who's also the patron goddess of Sicily.
Well, there you go. I love when we get synchronicities around Jeremy's heritage.
Around my of the Sicilian culture.
Demeter, interesting.
Yeah, and Persephone and the whole myth of descending to the underworld and returning.
Yeah. Well, that was cool. I'm glad we got to do this, y'all. We should do this again soon. And so people should submit their stories to the map at Liminal Earth. Just look for the submit button. And it's real easy. Like you said, you can be anonymous. You can put just your town name so you don't have to give personal details. And we'll read them here on the show.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We read about some of our latest submissions, and then we did some divination over the doppelganger phenomenon in general, and came to some pretty interesting conclusions that we're gonna sim around for a little bit. We're gonna let those marinate and see what happens. Thanks, guys. Bye. See you on the flip side. We're gonna talk about the LBL monster. The first recorded sighting is actually from French fur traders, reported seeing a half-man, half-wolf. By far the spookiest report goes back to 1973. A group of Murray State College students wanted to spend some time in the park, starting a fire, and it's starting to get dark. One of the students went to go use the restroom. As they proceeded back to the campsite, they felt the sense of being watched. What sounded like sniffing in the woods. I think I got that right on that. Yeah, sniffing. Group started to feel like something was circling the campground. Then the howling began. Dramatic sip. This was not your average coyote howl. They get the heck out of there. They take their VW bus, they're ripping the back roads. Something grabs the bus. Something's holding onto the bus. They eventually get free, hightail it back. Once they arrive, they check out the van. There's 4 gashes.